Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Easily Influenced and my name is Michelle. Today we are going to be talking about some more of my unpopular knitting opinions. I did a video on this last year and you guys seem to get a kick out of that. So this is part two, the extension of my unpopular opinions. As always, I'm going to give the YouTube disclaimer. If you disagree with these, that is absolutely fine. Variety is the spice of life, my friends. So this is meant to be kind of lighthearted, but hopefully sharing some thoughts that maybe other people have, and maybe I can find my knitting brethren, as it were. So if you disagree, totally fine. This is not a personal attack on you. And feel free to put your disagreement in the comments, by the way. Happy to hear other viewpoints. I am happy to change my opinions as well. This happens frequently. Shocker. I do change my opinions about things. So feel free to try to change my mind. But before I continue with all of my unpopular opinions, I want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of today's video, which is Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives like us. So it has such a wide variety of topics that no matter what your creative interest or leaning is, there is bound to be a class for you. Knitting is obviously my main creative hobby right now, but over the years I have had so many other creative interests, and I'm always adding new ones and building new things into my repertoire. And one of the areas I'd like to build my skills right now is in sewing. I taught myself to knit, but for whatever reason, that has been kind of difficult to do for sewing, especially the fundamentals. So, hand sewing, things like repairs to garments, hems, and so on. And luckily, there is a class on Skillshare that teaches just that. There's an in depth class that walks you through basic sewing techniques for mending and making garments. So, whatever your creative interest might be, whether it's sewing or gardening or design, there will be experts on Skillshare who can help you grow and polish those skills. And that's why I'm thrilled to be partnering with Skillshare again this month. The first 500 people to click the link in my description box below will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So get started today. Thanks again, Skillshare, for sponsoring this video. So let's get into these opinions. Okay, starting off here, rustic, when people say rustic yarn, that is a euphemism to me for itchy. I am sure that there is some technical industry definition of this somewhere. I have been unable to find this, by the way. There's lots of articles and things online, but a kind of universal definition of rustic, can't really find it, and people seem to use it in all sorts of different ways. But to me, when people say rustic, I'm like, okay, so that means it's itchy. I'm going to feel it on my skin. That's fine, by the way. Like, I think there's absolutely a place for, these types of yarns. And I think there is absolutely a place for those kind of woolier, itchier yarns that are just super sturdy, that can take a beating. They're not delicate like a cashmere or something like that. That's fine. Um, but I don't know why it's kind of rustic has become the term to describe all of these. I'm like, okay, so it's I guess it's woolier than maybe other yarns, I suppose, but there's a lot of other like natural wool fibers that are not given the moniker of rustic. So this is a term I feel like gets thrown around all over the place, and I I don't really understand. Mostly I will just assume that people mean it's going to be itchy. At least when I touch the yarns that people describe as rustic, that is the impression I walk away with. They're just going to be itchy. That's okay. You can live with it or not live with it. But yeah, calling something rustic to me, I'm like, are you trying to obscure what is actually going on here? That's how it comes off to me anyway. Okay, here's one. I have discovered this about myself. I do not like variegated yarn, and that is both in color and thickness. So when I knit, I'm trying to I'm trying to achieve an objective. Number one, that it is a very wearable garment. And for me, that means day to day, but also for work. And I do not work in a super formal environment, but it is business casual, let's call it. So I cannot be wearing things that, look too out there. So immediately I'm looking at more uniform yarns. I don't mind a speckled yarn. I actually quite like a speckled yarn. It's got a little bit of interest, but I'm talking about those heavily variegated, colorful, zany looking yarns. just don't work for me. And that's even ones that, on first glance are very classy looking, right? Like those beautiful marled mohairs, for example. Or I drool over pictures of like even, merinos that have been dyed in like really subtle, beautiful pastel colors and it's all variegated. But it's just never a thing I'm going to wear. And yes, it looks pretty in the hank. And then once it's knitted up, it just, in my opinion, it just never looks as nice and it's never as wearable for me. Now the thickness thing is another one. So everybody raves about the Noro Madara yarn. I think that a couple people have made garments out of. I am really bothered by differences in thickness of yarn. Um, I have pretty good tension. So if I'm knitting with a nice uniform yarn, everything works out usually pretty well for me. So my tension is quite even whether I'm knitting flat or in the round. I do not like the look of kind of messy, messy stitch definition, which is exactly what you're going to get with those yarns like the Noro, where, one part of it is like an Aran kind of thickness, and then it sort of gets really thin and goes down to like a DK. I just can't be dealing with this stuff. And I also feel like it just makes the finish of the garment look less nice, less polished, and that is the opposite of what I'm going for. So everyone raves about that yarn. I mean, again, in the hank, it looks beautiful, right? But I just know, having seen other creators work with it and show me sort of the difference in thickness, that it would not be a yarn that I would enjoy working with, number one, and definitely wouldn't be one that I would enjoy wearing. So variegated yarns, not my thing. Here is one that might ruffle some feathers. Summer garment knitting is mostly not worth the effort. And I say this as somebody who's knit summer garments before. I live in New York and the summers are brutally humid and hot. And the last thing I want to be wearing outside is anything knitted. And that's even if it's a cotton yarn. There's just a different weight to a knitted garment versus a light cotton t-shirt, for example, or a cotton sundress or something like that. And I run warm already. So if we're talking, knitted garments in the summer, I just can't do it. And people say, oh, well, they're smaller garments, so it's less time to knit them. Okay, but mostly these garments are in fingering weight or light fingering weight yarn. So even if you're not knitting a sweater with sleeves and everything, that's still a huge time commitment. And my summer knits, um, the other loops tee that I made, that took me forever because I was knitting it with a single strand of like knitting for olive silk, I think, pure silk. And it took, I mean, the better part of a month and a half, I want to say. So these are not quick, easy little projects by any means. And I've just discovered I don't really wear them. Um, what I do wear in the summer is when I'm in office in an air conditioned space, absolutely I will wear things that are knitted, with a short sleeve maybe, but not outside. I am not wearing these things outdoors. So I am much more focused on things that can sort of work in the shoulder seasons, right? So short sleeves, but in like a DK weight, or cardigans, or things that can be opened. Those pure like tank toppy summer stuff, just not, I don't know, it's just not that worth it to me because I'll never wear them outside. And in the summer, I'm outside a lot. So they just sort of sit and they're unused. All right, here's another one that might be a little controversial. In a similar vein, I feel like knitting kids' garments is also just not worth the squeeze. Um, Accessories, fine, because they're little and they do like they constantly need hats, they need mittens. But I I've knit a couple sweaters for my kids in the past, and they're just very rough on their garments. They're little boys and they're outside constantly running around, rolling around. And it's not even like if I make something for my older one that it's going to be in a good enough state that I can pass it on to the younger one. So it just doesn't really feel worth it to me. And it's not like, if you're knitting a sweater will still take me a minute, right? It's not like I can do it in a day. So again, I feel like until they're a little older, this is probably one that is just not really something I like spending my time on. But yeah, accessories are fine. Just garments for kids, at least my kids. Maybe other people's kids are different. My kids, not a good use of my time. Okay, saving this one for last because again, I think you guys will have some opinions on this too. I firmly believe that knitwear designers are not charging enough for their patterns. It is actually crazy to me that I can buy a pattern for, call it $7, $8, where I don't have to do any thinking. I can just follow instructions and knit garments in whatever sizes I want to. So from usually from kid size or, whatever, like if it's an accessory kid size to adult size or in 9 different sizes for garments for adults. It's crazy to me that that only costs $7. Um, and yeah, if people suddenly started charging more for their patterns, would it mean I could buy less of them? Yes, absolutely it would. But I just think the amount of effort and time and creativity and creation that goes into putting together a coherent pattern, I mean, it's huge. And that's not even to mention like the grading and the testing and then the iteration of making that a product that people can use and that's intuitive and it's easy to read and translating it into a multiple different languages and then for it to still only cost $8. I mean, there's an aspect of a volume play here. Yes, absolutely, but I'm like, this should cost way more. I'm sorry. Like, if I was, and I've thought about this myself, right? I'm not a designer by any means, but if I was to put that much effort into something, my man hours and my time making something and knitting something and creating it and having testers do that and manage that whole process and, do the copy and do um, the translation coordination and making sure that things are clear and understandable. If I was doing all of that, I would put a higher price tag on that, on my time spent, the upfront time to create this product. So I firmly believe that knitwear designers should charge more. I would pay more, and it just means I would buy less patterns. Because yeah, if I was paying $15 a pattern instead of 7, yeah, I probably wouldn't buy, 100 patterns a year or whatever it is I'm buying. Like I'd buy less. But I think, these are creatives who are putting their time and effort and creativity and work into something. And I'm shocked that it costs as little as it does. So that's it for my controversial or maybe not controversial opinions. You guys might agree with all of these, or maybe you disagree with all of them. Either way, put your comments down below. Always interested to hear your thoughts. And thank you, as always, for joining me here. So, with all that said, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will catch you next time. Bye for now.